bye, 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 bye.
Hello, Jody Raynsford. Hello, listener.
Hello, David Hellard. How are you?
I'm okay. I've just spent, well, as you know, I've spent the morning trying to connect my Wi-Fi extender, Joy of Joys, and the new password that for some reason is forced upon me by this extender is, I was going to count how many digits it is, but it is too many digits. It's, what, I mean, is it an issue if I put out my password on YouTube?
I don't know. Can you? I mean, I tell you what though, like, I wouldn't put anything past Russian hackers. If you start, all of a sudden you find that you're. I mean, I don't know, understand this, but you find that you're mining Bitcoin from your house because somehow they've hacked into your technology. And you're like, well, our electricity bill's like £5,000 a month. I don't understand that. Why?
I mean, it probably just is. It's just
I know, that's it. Yeah, that's just. Yeah, no, you wouldn't bat an eyelid at that. You'd be like, oh, it's £5,000 a month now. That's perfectly normal. So, listener, if you're watching, or listener or viewer, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe before we continue to make sure that you get all of the subsequent videos we've got coming out on YouTube. We're not going
to continue, and same on the podcast. We're not going to continue until you leave a review.
We're just going to sit. Listener, we've got our arms crossed, and we're looking at you like a teacher would look at someone who hasn't done the thing they've asked of them. Everyone, no one's going to do anything until you've pressed subscribe.
Ooh. Oh, they did it! They did it! Yeah! But how are you? Well, Jay, we haven't chatted for a while because you've been away filming. What a glamour-puss you are!
Oh yes, yeah. It wasn't me filming. We were filming clients. So it wasn't that kind of exciting type of filming type thing. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting when you're doing that stuff. I hate filming. You're really good at it, but I absolutely hate it. Like, you put a camera in front of you and you go, boom,
in front, boom, or behind, or
in front of the camera.
I just say boom. Yeah. I can't believe Said It Boom's not been onto me for. I mean, it's all I've got. Oh really? And is that? But do you think were you used to performing when you were younger? Would you public speak? Would you be in plays? Would you? Yeah,
no, absolutely. Like I've never had an issue with public speaking, presenting, all of that. I've never had an issue. For some reason, put a camera in front of me, and there's two situations where people are really surprised that I really struggle. The first one is interview stage. I can interview people really well. Can I be interviewed? I don't know what happens to me. I end up having like Tourette's or something. I blurt out the most ridiculous stuff.
What are you interviewing for?
When I was my last interviews I ever went to is when I was applying for graduate jobs. That was the last thing. But I was terrible. I was awful at interview. Just like the worst, scattiest. Like, I'm going to go on a massive monologue now about stuff that's completely irrelevant to this. I'm going to tell you about the programmes I used to watch when I was a kid. And, like, genuinely.
I wish you'd have told me this before.
Genuinely. I was in an RBS Markets interview and I'm going on about how I used to watch bloody, like, all these... I can't remember what the name of the programme was. It had Sir John Harvey Jones in it.
Oh, the lunchtime update on the markets.
It was something I was going on, just absolute rubbish. Yeah. And it's the same thing happens when I get in front of a camera. I am utterly shit. It's like just if it's a like an
Panic.
iPhone or something like that, I'm fine. But if you have like a professional camera setup, all of a sudden I don't know what it is, the pressure of it or something else about it. I just go to shit. I don't know why. It's weird, isn't it?
It's quite. There's more of an immediacy of that pressure because say you've got 1,000 people who are there, you can be silent, and actually silence in some ways is the most powerful thing you can do because it shows control, and you're not saying anything bad, and it gives you a bit of space to actually think, and it almost
silence is powerful.
When you then say something, It is. Silence is the way. I only noticed this the other.
Are you talking specifically to me, Jody? when you are silent, it is the way. I would say make silence your strategy, Jody, and you are going to go much, much further.
You'd be the most powerful monk, just never speaking. But I noticed that actually, because I used to love Tony Benn. I still love Tony Benn, sadly he's not with us anymore, but he would always smoke his pipe, and that was his way of, he'd be like, ah, and he'd fill his pipe up, and that was his staller. But Barack Obama, powerful public speaker, and it's partly because he doesn't fill it all with guff.
Yeah.
And that's because he always has these little lines that he uses. He goes, listen up. Now, and he'll say little phrases like that mean nothing, but there's a pause before it. He says that, then there's a pause, then he says this thing slowly, and you're like, wow, that was so... Rather than someone going, I don't know, maybe we'll fix the economy, would that help? Or would he go, now listen up, we need to fix the economy. And you'd be like, whoa. So it's... But the weird thing is when you're... So we'll often have to film where it is almost one take.
Yeah.
Because you start before the race, you then need to leave to get to your next place. And you have to be at a certain place to get a certain shot. But at times there are all these people watching, waiting for the start, and their family who are all there, bored, thinking, oh, we watched this person who we may or may not know have to, in one take, do whatever it is they do. And that is quite weird because you haven't really... You've got an approximate script in your head, but in some ways, the more you have in your head, the harder it becomes, because trying to say what specific lines is harder than just talking. So maybe you need to free flow more.
I always that's the problem. I always free flow, and I do the opposite. Every time I do a presentation or a webinar or something like that, I always get some public speaking expert going, we've I've had a listen to that, and do you want to book a call because I've got some pointers. And I'm like, oh, yes, I know, it's it sounds like a fucking great monologue and everything else like that, but it's true, having those words where you just go, listen. And and it's just it's one of those things that they teach you in public speaking to be able to do, to give yourself enough time to think. The difference is I try that, and in the period of time where I'm thinking, I can't think of anything, and so to me, when you have like a silence, it just seems like it's so long, and it's just pure panic. Every time I speak, it is pure panic. Regardless, even now I'm panicking as I'm talking.
But I'm amazed because when I was at Accenture, part of what I was doing was helping I'd manage our conference participation, event participation, organised conferences, things like that. And so we'd often have senior executives who were potentially nervous, not public speakers, because it's one of those fears that it doesn't really collate with anything else in your life. You could be, as you say, very confident in some areas, and you just suddenly have this fear. And so we'd book in this person to come and coach them on how to public speak. It cost about £1,600, and this was about 10 years ago for an hour, 2 hours to come in. And the main thing they did was just get them to repeat it and be like, yeah, great, yeah, and just make them feel really good about it.
It is, isn't it? It's just...
So at the end they'd be like...
Well, that's the thing, it's a confidence thing, isn't it?
Pull out completely, and they just pull out I really like what you did there. Whereas actually, at that time I thought, I think I could train better than this. And having done all the startup events where I'd be doing pitch competitions, I realised that how I did things was completely different to how it... And I think actually... And we didn't know we were going to be talking about public speaking at all. So, listener, if you're new to running and new to the podcast, sorry.
We're helping you.
We've got some running stuff coming up.
We're helping you develop your personal brand. If you're launching a running YouTube channel or a podcast, this is all very useful. And I think a lot of runners who, anyone now I've done my first park run. Now I want to be a public speaker. This is probably useful for you as well, because pretty much every runner wants to be a fucking public speaker now, don't they? So this is all useful information.
Have you run a 5k a day? Yeah. So, absolutely. So, But I then had quite a few people after these pitch competitions say, would you give me some advice? Would you help me with some tips? And I realised actually what the key thing I thought was I'd almost have these. If you imagine a journey where you've got your different paragraphs and you're going through the story of whatever it is, where you start at here I am, why I'm doing this, and I'd almost tell them that you need to have these like flagpoles that you'd go from A to B to C as your flagpoles.
Yeah.
And you'd have a phrase that you'd know, which would be your marketing phrase. And so even now it would be, you can book a plane, you can book a car, you can book a plane, you can even book plastic surgery online, but you cannot book a meeting room. So that would be my phrase, which would be my flagpole. And so you have enough of these flagpoles, and then you just kind of weave from flagpole to flagpole, and you know approximately the order of those flagpoles. So you start with your 10 bullet point list of your flagpoles, where you'd then be able to talk around it, but you'd have your phrase, and if you weren't sure what to do, if you're stumbling, you'd go to your next flagpole, and then you can build it out, and you'd then come up with a cohesive talk where you wouldn't necessarily need the flagpole pointers on your piece of paper anymore, because you know those so well, and suddenly you're doing, like, we'd have to pitch for 3 minutes, and by the end of it, I'd have, for this competition, I got it to the second.
Yeah.
Where and that was the thing that was, we smashed that competition because there was the tension in the audience where I was giving it full throttle for 3 minutes with like different paces, the little jokes, the marketing spiel, and then you could see the lights going with like the 10, 9, and the person standing up holding up the signs, and everyone's thinking, is he going to overrun? Is he going to overrun? And then I just do my last flagpole, and it was, first there was bookings.com, then there was Airbnb, now there's Zipcube. Final second, and then the breathe out, and everyone's like, what the fuck just hit us there? So so that would be.
So in summation,
recommend.
you were brilliant.
In summation, that was brilliant. Yeah,
That was incredible.
And generally, like, I don't like to toot too much, but that was one of those times.
You are good. You are very good.
That was one of those moments where I was like, but you know when you finish something, you're like, bloody hell. But interestingly, that links into. I've been listening to this podcast about cults. I love cults, and this one is
There's
to
a book
do
about
with
that.
Forever Flame, or yes, there is. Very good book. This was like to do with finding your. Is it Forever Flame? Some twin flame. So the concept behind it is.
What does that mean?
It's this new wanky. I don't know where it's come from, but the idea is there's one person in the world who is your twin flame, who is yada yada yada. It's the equivalent of soulmate.
As in love, or as in someone that aligns. Well, how?
Yes.
Is it a relationship thing? Okay.
Absolute love, twin love, where they talk about this person who
twin love. That's a very different thing.
Flame.
That's a very different.
I've tried. They've always turned me down. But yeah, the twin flame would, and so this couple have set themselves up as these gurus for how to find your twin flame. They're charging $4,444 if you do the full program. Then it continues, and it turns out actually he is the prophet that Jesus was the shadow of. This is taking a tangent. And then the people who, and it's probably called twin flame, and they were saying when they were analysing the last episode, they were talking about how this happens and how people kind of get pulled into it, is that he was always very confident in telling you when he'd said something like very poignant or he'd be like, wow, isn't that deep? Aren't I? Like, and how he was just so confident in everything he did. But also then the issue, because they had this issue where if you've got your twin flame, and it turned out that everyone who was coming into this program, whoever they were thinking of that moment, happened to be their twin flame. And if you truly believe they're your twin flame, then you can't let go of the fact that they're your twin flame. And so all these people were getting. One person went to jail for stalking, for harassment, because it was all about, well, they're your twin flame. How can you give up on the twin flame? And the fact that they're responding to you with such a force just shows how strong this fire is, that it's their way of telling you. And it's just incredible. Just the whole narrative of... And so, tangent. Let's talk about running.
I was just noting down those details. Okay, twin flame. Make sure that they identify with someone. Flame. That's good. No. So is that podcast? Is that podcast going to be made into a Disney Plus series now?
I hope so. I mean, yes and no, because the people are still out there and probably trying to make money off this. So in some ways, it will probably fuel their power to have a documentary and a podcast. But because all these individuals were then going to jail or then having orders slapped on them not to be able to ever contact these people, they then had this issue with all these people who'd paid this money who needed their twin flame. And so they then said they've got new twin flames for them. And they were like, it's someone in the group.
Wait a minute. But so you don't come into the group as a twin flame. You come into the group and you've picked your twin flame, but the other person might not know that
you're looking for a twin flame.
So the other person may not know.
You're looking for a twin flame.
And that might be someone outside the group.
And often it's like, I really like this person. They're like, they're your twin flame. You have to go get them. Don't let them stop. But then when they've had all these issues with, it's, they've put court orders, they're married to someone else, all these things. They've got children, happy family, and they've blocked all their phone numbers and they've moved out of the state. That type of thing. They're like, well, we still think we've got a new twin flame, but because the group was predominantly women, it was then, so your twin flame is actually your best friend so-and-so, and we don't believe in lesbianism, but actually you're a man deep down, and you need to change, and then this is your twin flame. And so by this stage, people are in a horrific situation in the cult, where you're pretty beaten down at this stage, mentally, your identity, and it's just insane.
So what's this podcast called?
How far people are pushed. I think twin flame. I hope twin flame. You've said it a lot.
I don't know. You've said it so fucking much. I'm indoctrinated. Guys, I'm all going to be thinking about the twin flame.
Excuse me, Jody. You were my twin flame.
I knew that it was leading up to this. I knew that it was. Imagine that. But we're going on holiday together.
We are indeed. Press junket. Although we're not sure.
Go on. I was going to say this is the first. What's
your interpretation of it?
Oh, I don't know. This feels like classic. This is classic. We need to go to the headquarters junket. We're going to get them to try some of the kit. The bigwigs, they want to do the talking, but they want to do the talking in HQ, so they can control the environment. I don't know. It reminds me. It reminds me when I went to Adidas and they launched the whole boost technology thing as well. Like, these kind of things happen all the time when you're a journalist. I think this is our first invite as BBR to like an overseas launch thing. I think it is. Well, you might have had a few.
Probably. I've had some smaller ones where I've just not had the time, or there's often invites where you have to fly there. You're like, great. I will come on a Tuesday at 3 p.m. to Copenhagen or wherever it may be. But yeah, we've been invited out by On Running, do-badders, to the launch of one of their shoes, and we're going to be training with an Olympic athlete. But they haven't said who it is, which I find fascinating in some ways, because it either implies they don't know who it is yet, or they don't think it's good enough a name to entice us in, and so they're just...
That's incredible, isn't it? Just you fill in the gaps. We have someone who's really good at running, and you just think, oh, wait a minute.
They haven't even said they're a runner. They could be a shopkeeper or something.
Yes. Yeah, but yeah, so it's all in a day though. That's the thing. All in a day. Zurich in a day.
Yeah, which is gonna be. The flight's at 6 in the morning and he gets back at 7 at night. So I think we're scheduled to record a podcast that night as well. So it's going to be one hell of a trip. But I'm intrigued more than anything because you've done these in the past, and it'll be great to see the contrast between what it was like then and what it's like now. Not just in what happens during the day, but who's there. Because, as you say, this is a transition from when you were a running journalist and everyone there would be from magazines. Yeah. And now, who knows what the balance of people will be?
Yeah, exactly. And also, back then, we were there and, we were writing it for written publications, online publications, had an official photographer there who was going to be provided. But now, we've all got our phones. We can record stuff when we're there. We can use social media, and that's all part of it as well. So that's how I wasn't in journalism at a point where they had embargoes and stuff, and everyone had social media, and so was using social media and recording it and documenting the whole event. You would never document your journey out to a fucking press junket. That would never be part of the story. It would always be the thing that you report. It'd be the interview you've done, it'd be the launch and stuff like that, but you'd never be like, oh, we're getting on a plane or we're doing this, which is actually probably more interesting than the piece about the about what's actually being launched, because you're kind of seeing behind the scenes. So there's just a whole completely new dimension to it, which I think will be really interesting as well.
Are we doing pints in Wetherspoons beforehand? Do you think is that kind of vibe?
Of course, we need to set up. The thing is, the key thing always is to set your stall with everyone else, because that's where you tell the mark of the group of people that you're with. Because if you can convince more people to, because it scares the shit out of the PRs at that point. Because at the PR, you're just like, this is going to be a logistical nightmare to get everybody there on time in that time in the morning, to get there on time, because it's a Heathrow. There's fucking loads of roadworks everywhere. There are so many issues. Things could be late. Someone will invariably forget their passport, because that always happens with traditional journalists. Probably not influencers and stuff like that, but happens all the time. So they're all they've got so much that they've got to do to fit in, to tick off all these boxes. When a journalist turns up and goes, I'm having a fucking pint at 6 in the morning, you're like, what the fuck am I dealing with? It throws in... It just adds that element of danger to the PR, for the PR, where they're just like, what is going to happen?
We get, like, brew AF
shots for the plane.
Yeah, so and actually, because I've been in trouble with Greg, I've been in trouble with Salomon for wearing my Lidl shoes too much while I'm away with Salomon, because they've bought
nothing to do with Salomon. Nothing to do with Salomon. It's just a taste thing.
It is. So I don't honestly know what my limits are of brand representation or not, because I represent the Golden Trail series, which is sponsored by Salomon, but I'm not like a Salomon athlete or anything like that, and I've not. So
you're Salomon, but you're not an athlete.
True. Well, changing.
Well, no, but
he's not a good athlete anymore.
But you're right. You're not sponsored as an athlete, are you? You're sponsored as a presenter, and that means that there is, distinctly less requirements of you to be on brand all the time, particularly when you're in the context of representing Bad Boy Running.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I mean, and I can't imagine.
Maybe, hopefully.
I haven't read these contracts, so. But I'm quite looking forward to this, because I like the fact, if you look at what they've done, they've sponsored the refugee teams. They've sponsored the Hour 7, Mike Stock's ultra firm. They've just got behind them. So they seem to be supportive people who actually are doing nice and interesting things rather than just thinking, what's the bottom line on this?
Yeah.
So I think they're launching a European run club, which could mean anything, and it will be. I'm quite excited to hear what their plan is, because it's got to be quite an ambitious plan if they're flying people out, and that hopefully, given that they've been so supportive of other areas of running, could be really good for all runners. Fingers crossed. So watch this space, and and how much should we drink while we are there, Dupads? Like, any challenges that we should do while we're there?
Challenges. I don't know where is. So it's in Zurich, is it? I wonder if they've got like a kind of a distinct building that reflects what they do, because a lot of these places, they have like their own museums, stuff like that. But On Running's it's not a legacy brand; it's a relatively new brand. So it'd be interesting to see what it kind of looks like.
And that's when you know how much money like they've got behind them, is when you see like a building that you're like, really? Whereas a lot of brands are in a car park or a business park somewhere. But are you back running? Are you going to be ready to train with this Olympic athlete?
I will be probably sitting out. I'm going to be filming you running with this Olympic athlete. Probably. That's.
Are you not going to run at all?
I'm going to.
Oh, come on.
No, I will. I mean, I will run some. Yeah, absolutely. Depends who the athlete is. I'm hoping that they're really slow. I think that if they're like a swimmer or something like that, and they're really slow, that'd be great. I don't know. Is it training with an athlete? I don't know what to expect.
And even within that, because you have to assume that if they're getting a whole cross section of journalists, then the abilities would be very different. So how do you actually train? Yeah, who knows? Any Swiss runners? Swiss Olympic runners? Let's have a look. But I've been...
how it used to work... How it used to work previously was that you know... Right, journalists were journalists. They weren't necessarily runners. They'd be like imported into different, on a different magazine. You know, they may have worked for like Hi-Fi magazine beforehand, and then moved to a running magazine, and then they kind of become running because they're experts at editing a magazine and being a section editor or something else, and then they kind of learn thing. And so you wouldn't ever get people that were, like runners from as part of their sort of like their daily habits or whatever. Those other journalists would be brought in, for whatever. But in terms of like the editorial team, sometimes it wouldn't be. So when you go to those things, there would be, like you say, a complete contrast of people who were super fit, super hot on their running, really sort of clued up about it, and then people that were more about I'm here to get the all the blurb from them. I'm here to get the keynote speech. I'm here to do the interviews and stuff like that. And I'll take the free pair of shoes, but I'm not fucking running anywhere. So, and that was that's kind of thing. So, but I think that would have changed massively, especially if is it mainly influencers.
But we're going to be speaking to the CEOs, Dubadders. So what questions would you like us to ask the CEOs of On Running? And we'll record it, because we might as well, right? Just to see how it goes.
We at least have to pretend to record it, or make it look like we're documenting something. Just notepads with scribbles in. We're just going, that's good answer. Thank you. And they'll be like, also, when are you going to cover this? Like, we have already, haven't we? Aren't we doing it now?
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know whether they're expecting us to actually record or not. I guess we can use our phones, can't we, for something? I've got some kind of recording equipment. But I've looked up the Swiss athletes at the Summer Olympics. So, in the men's, we have Tadesse Abraham, who DNF'd the marathon. Do better.
That's my kind of guy, hoping to him.
And then we have someone... Yeah, exactly. We've got Julian Wonders, who came 21st in the 10,000 metres. And that is all the Swiss male runners in the Summer Olympics.
Okay.
Which is... I wouldn't say it's a great showing. In the females, we've got... we've got 3 sprinters who they got to the quarters, I think. Only got to 5th and 6th in the final. That's not bad. That's actually pretty good. That can't be right, surely. Wow. Fair play.
And in a second, David disses the Swiss on the track. Uninvited.
Two Swiss. That's it. Got 2 Swiss female athletes in the 100-meter final, 5th and 6th. That is incredibly unexpected, I'd say. Wow, they're quick as well. They did 10.91, 10.95 in the quarterfinals. The women are so much better than the men. So we've got Fabian Schlumpf, who came 12th in the marathon. Yeah. And 4th in the final for the 4x100 relay. So that's your pick. I don't know who it's going to be from then, unless there's some very well-known traditional Swiss athlete. But yeah, we'll find out in less than a month, 3 weeks. So, but are you back running now then?
Yeah. Only about half an hour, 40 minutes a day. Not really thinking about distance, but it's more just getting back in the habit. And I'm still doing the thing with the stopping and starting with. Do you know what? Since I've been doing the barefoot thing, I do think my feet are a lot better. I am pretty much barefoot the whole time, like when I'm at home and everything. And I feel like they ache less. I feel like they're more flexible. I don't know. I definitely feel a difference, and that's without doing any program or course like that. And running and then stopping when you feel like the form is you're dropping your form. But yeah, definitely feels.
And
feels better.
How far do you? Where are you now? Like what distance does that get you to, or what time does that get you to?
Well, I've only been doing. I'm doing it by just going out for half an hour to 40 minutes. I haven't got a watch on me, so I don't really know. I go around like the block twice.
But the whole thing barefoot.
Oh no, I don't do any of it barefoot.
But the whole thing barefoot.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm barefoot at home, and when I'm going out, I've got these pair of shoes that I got when I went again on a press junket with Asics, and they're called Asics 33, and I've had them for ages, and I've never. But they were supposed to be barefoot shoes, and I've had them for like 10 years or whatever, and I've never really worn them, and so I put them on, and I absolutely love them. And they're just absolutely. They've got a really wide toe box. And my feet are properly spread out. They're really, really comfortable. They're great. They're kind of zero drop or very close to it. And so now I can't fucking buy them, can I? Because they're 10 years old. So brilliant. So if anyone knows like what the closest alternative to those are, that would be great. But yeah, I'm not running probably barefoot.
Asics 43 by now. Maybe they just had a number each year. Yeah. Potentially.
Yeah, exactly. It's they just put. I can't. Where are they? Oh, they're not up here. But they're really good. But yeah, not a great recommendation a decade on. But yeah. So, but what about you then? So, how have you been pushing on with your 5K times?
I've been continuing. I wouldn't say I've been pushing. So, I've done 2 more park runs since. And I've been the same as you, actually, where I've gone out with my watch, but I've not been, at no point even, I've started to do, I did first proper interval session on Monday, so 2 days ago with Briggsy. I started doing kind of tempo runs midweek, but a little bit shorter the week before. But the second, so previously, on David's Park Run.
Previously on Lost.
I'd done, was it 2020 and then 1940 the week after. So like a huge jump, which surprised me. Then partly I think down to better pacing. The next time I turned up late and then was just charging through the pack. Not really, my head wasn't really in it.
Yeah.
I got 1940 again. Which actually I was pleased with, given the circumstances that. Yeah. And then this last park run, I was pretty hungover, and kind of died as well because of that. Maybe paced a little bit better because I was just feeling rough, and died halfway through. But then had an amazing, really good Young the Giant song come on, called, what song was it? Superposition. And for some reason it brought me back to life. And so, but that was just under 20 minutes. So slower, but actually I think I'm pretty pleased with that, because I was hungover, I was knackered, and I wasn't really, my head wasn't in it at any point, and I had properly died halfway round. So I'm quite intrigued to know this weekend when, but even within, like, I think the key is, like, fartlek is so good, where you just do a mixed pace run. And I think for you, starting to do some faster parts of those round the block, just informal ones.
I do. Do you know what? I think my chest is cleared. It feels as though all the issues I was having with my breathing seems to have disappeared. I haven't done anything sort of high intensity, but it feels as though I just feel as though I can do it now. So I'm definitely gonna be doing that in the next week or so, just because I feel like I'm able to again. So I think it's starting to clear and I'm starting to feel better, which is great.
But I do think getting those intervals in, or getting some faster tempo work, will make everything feel so much easier.
Yeah.
Because and that's where I've almost, I'm coming back sensibly, and I went out for a tempo run where I thought, I'll just do a 5k tempo run on a Thursday, which should be fine. But I forgot that I'm just not there. I'm nowhere near there. And actually, it was way too much to be doing.
Oh, really?
And so, I ended up doing a mile, taking a 2-minute jog, doing another mile, and then the last one I only made it to a kilometre, and I was just blown out my arse. And that's why where actually I've realised it's so important not to be following times when you're coming into training, when you're coming into fitness, when you don't know what you should be doing, because it's so irrelevant to how you're feeling on that day. And so I'm now, like, Briggsy and I went and did some hill sprints on Monday that was super hard, but actually really nice, where we just found a little path, and they weren't too hard. We did maybe 70 seconds up and down as a combined, and so now this is where I'm interested to see how I feel in the next 2 weeks, because I'm actually starting to get back in. But we just can't be asked to do any long runs. That was the thing. Like, on Sunday we got up and we were going to go for a walk to get a bit of a lunch in Peckham to explore, and then get a run in, and we just couldn't be asked. And we ended up walking, I think, 11 miles, because we were both in our running kit going, we'll walk here. And we went to just a few nice areas to explore. And I think that, for me, is going to be the issue now with getting back into ultra running or marathon running. I just don't know if I can be bothered to have to do 2-3 hours of running every Sunday.
It's really funny, because that's exactly how I felt after it was probably the first Thames Path that I did. It's like I found it very easy to go out and do 2 or 3 hours on a long run, even if slow and everything else like that. And for some reason, after that, something just died. Like, some enthusiasm for it died. Like, the idea
just died.
Yeah, well, just the because you can kind of go out and you can think, well, I'll take a map with me, and I can, like, kind of explore a bit, and I can run some places I haven't run before, and it can all be quite a thing. And then there's just something where that stopped being the case, and I don't know what it was. I don't know whether it was because of doing 100 miles or and it being not a great experience or whatever, but I found it really hard to do that. And since then, I have just the idea of a long run is a really difficult thing. It's almost like you have to schedule in races to be your long runs, and just say, I'm not going to race this race. I'm just going to use this race as a long run in order to try and do the distance. Because that's interesting that you're finding that, because I just thought that was a bit weird, but I wonder if it hits everyone at some point.
But I think in some ways I am now closer to how you were then in terms of our communities, because you've always been far more disconnected from a local running community than I have, and so whenever I've been running, I've been going to track, I've been competing in cross country, I've been doing all these races or been in a race team. And so actually you're constantly being challenged. You've got all these mini goals. You've got all these other drivers that help motivate you. Whereas now, I guess I'm more similar to how you've been, where I'm not in a running community as such anymore. So everything is purely self-generated. And I think the combination now of we're both at that stage where we are potentially past our best, even if we tried to train as hard as we could.
I like to use the Gene Dykes thing and say I've never tried to be my best at this stage. I'm saving my 15 years of brilliance to a bit later. I want to get those records.
Yeah, exactly. So I the thing is, right now I'm enjoying my running. I'm back to a run into work at 5 miles feels like a completely normal distance, and there's nothing, but this is quite, and I'm not quite there, but I'm almost at the fitness that doesn't feel like an effort at all. I think those faster runs will help with that, and that's what I'm not sure what the trigger will be. I'm hoping actually going on the Golden Trail, going back on that tour, because suddenly I'm going to be able to film them running. Previously I've just been stood there with a camera, whereas now I can actually get an OMO, whatever they're called, and run with them up the hills, down the hills, while I'm doing the presenting. And that's going to be cool, and that's going to be fun. And it also means when I'm at times there on a Sunday post race, and you just want to run, and so I'm hoping that will get me into it. But then is what I'm also hoping is there is a way to get back into competitive running without having to smash it with 20-mile runs every Sunday, because surely there is, you'd think, with just gym and focused training, to be able to be quick, or at least to be specialised at a different distance without having to do that colossal mileage. Because realistically, I don't want to be doing that if we have kids, when we have kids.
Sophie Power, 31 miles a week. That's the thing you've just got to keep thinking about. Yeah,
but Sophie's not going for trying to be as fast as she can at 5Ks, 10Ks cross country. She's going for doing enough to get through a grueling challenge. So there must be other examples of people, because you hear of people like your Seb Coes and Steve Avettes, who they were still doing the same mileage as the marathon runners. It's just they were doing it in different ways. They're focusing on their splits and their intervals and things. And so, who are the athletes out there that we know? It could be individuals that aren't top end, or it could be athletes that aren't pulling crazy miles. Like, what is it they're doing? Because that's really probably the most useful guest for our listeners, because we all know we can just run loads, and if we don't get injured, we're going to get quicker. But that's not particularly useful for a busy life, is it? Or for an unmotivated life, which is probably equally.
I do. How much do you stick by that? Because we're always told, the more you run, the quicker you'll get. Do you think it's possible for me to be hitting 70, 80 miles a week and for me to still not get faster? Because I think that's entirely possible.
No, not a chance. The only way is if your eating went up so much that you actually were gaining weight. Which
challenge accepted.
Is potentially possible. Who knows? Yeah. No, I mean...
No way. No way. I'm never going to do 70, 80-mile weeks.
The way that could happen, potentially, is if you ended up just getting so tired from the training that your body started to become ill, and because you can go through those times of overtraining where you function really badly, and not just at running, you function physically, you get ill, you're in bits, and so that certainly could happen. Or you were running the wrong paces and you were running too hard at times, and you'd just be strained, worn down. But sadly, that's the issue with running, is that, and that's the real issue with real top end runners. And you can see some really good runners. I think Ben Moreau back in his day, and Paul Martelletti they've clocked massive miles to get that little bit faster, and it's worked in the short term, but I think it's just, you can't live that way, and even if you can live that way, you're probably going to get injured, right, at some point, and it's just impossible to stay motivated doing that year on year. But in terms of trying to run more, so London wise, I've got a couple of things that I've kind of observed on my commute today.
Go for it.
On my commute in, my run in.
Yeah.
Well, the first one is, weirdly, so this is to do with cycling, property, and this is a PR piece, so you never know how true this is or whether it's just, but they're using figures and things. But
not
property,
true.
Well, the trouble is they use specific figures, which suggests to me that it could be true, but property on London cycle routes is more expensive than property in the surrounding area that's not on a cycling route. So they've looked at the superhighways, and
but isn't one after the other? Isn't there's correlation but not causation in things? Surely the cycle routes are going to be along roads that are more suitable for it, and if roads are more suitable for it, the likelihood is that it's going to be more expensive property, surely.
This is what they haven't looked at, but my instinct from buying property, renting property, is I don't want to be on a busy road, living on a busy road.
Are we talking about residential or commercial?
Just back. Residential.
Right.
And I don't want to be on a busy road because of the noise and the pollution. But most of the cycle routes are on fairly major roads. There's the odd ones that break free, like up through Peckham, but they typically they run along the bridges, those main arteries. But it's all based on postcodes. So I guess the issue is it's near to. You're right. It's near to the main roads. It's near to the life of the action, and the postcode, I think, is more than just one road, isn't it? It'd be like a road back. But the crazy thing that they quoted in here was, and to do with renting, and that they said now that people would rather be closer to a good cycle route. I'll just see if I can find the quote. Would rather be closer to a good cycle route than to a good tube stop, which feels feels counterintuitive.
Well, that's a massive change. That must be a massive change, because when I was living in London, like, cycling was constantly in the news, like cycling deaths and how dangerous it was, and I suppose the work that has been done to try and make it safer has obviously had a positive effect.
Yeah, absolutely, and but I still, it doesn't seem right that people would prefer to be on a cycling superhighway than.
Who did this? Who did this research?
I'd much rather be. So this was a property market. Property booming, the property website. So they do actually have access to the data. And this is what we used to do at ZipCube with meeting rooms. We'd try and come up with clever observations based on the data that could tap into a different narrative. So then, firstly, you're going to a site. This is with road.cc, the cycling website. You're going to a website with a story where you're not saying, I'm a cycling brand, I'm getting away of not paying for stuff on your website, because you're not going to be paying on road.cc as booming. You wouldn't advertise there. So but yeah, that really surprised me. That is it's in the interest. It's in the interest of real estate and estate agents and property developers to make that point, because it has always been the point that the value of a property has always been higher around a tube station, hasn't it? That is always that you pay more for being around a tube station, which means that areas where there aren't a tube station, they have been sort of suppressed. So it's in the interests of the property developers and the property market to start coming up with that counter of this isn't near a tube, but this is near a major cycle route, and then and try to equate that with the same level of value. That's the only thing I can think that they would do that for. Yeah, because this is the crazy. It says Blooming's research found that 73% of London buyers and tenants would now prioritise living within close proximity of a major cycle route over living similarly close to a tube station. 73%.
73% of cyclists.
That is wrong.
73% of cyclists who are buying homes, surely. Not 73% of everyone.
Be cyclists.
It couldn't be everyone. Oh, I don't cycle, but I really need to be near a cycle route. I hate cyclists, so it's really important that I'm near a cycle route so I can abuse them on my way into work.
Maybe it's just do-badders who want to be
exactly.
putting out tax.
I want to live near a cycle route because I need to see the enemy. I need to see where they are.
But this is, I think it's because I do think more cycling is good for runners as well, because it encourages healthy living, it changes the makeup, and I also run on cycling lanes quite a lot. So hopefully news like this is good because it encourages people to stop slating cyclists the whole time and we're the running campaign through Scott is trying to get runners seen more on a parity with cyclists and actually considered in planning and in travel priorities, and so cyclists being elevated hopefully at some point will drag up runners. But then the other thing I noted with the joy of running, I was running with Briggsy and we were both in completely bright coloured clothes, as you'd imagine. Just crossing London Bridge, how all you could see as per usual, and just crossing London Bridge when the commuters are there, just that everyone's wearing black.
Yeah,
it's quite a sad, depressing walk in some ways, because it was a sunny day, but you're just looking ahead, and every single jacket, nearly every bag, nearly every coat was just black or grey. They're like, wow, this is. The other thing I think is interesting about London that you realise when you go back to London, certainly to the parts we go to, is that everyone's slimmer. Like, everyone is thinner in London. I know it's a ridiculous comment, I know, but it just seems to be the thing that I always notice, that you don't, like, when you're in like the type of town we're in, it's just people dress differently and they are generally slimmer. Because I suppose, you have to, people drive everywhere. That's the thing around here. You've got to drive everywhere. In London, you've got to walk everywhere. Even on the tube, you've got to you get your 10,000 steps pretty damn easily in London. Even if you walk, even if you're using public transport or anything as well. So I think that makes a big difference. But that's what we should do. We should catch up with Scott actually and find out how it's going, how the whole the campaign's going, how the running mare's going. Whether are some places achieving more than others? Is it being still widely ignored? Because it's really interesting when people launch these campaigns how much it is really making a change, and whether. Actually, and one thing we talk about is seeing best practice. What has
what has worked in various places so that other people know. And I'm sure they're sharing all that information, but it'd be useful to have a little bit more oxygen around that.
And even what people are asking, because one of the issues I struggled with was when it comes to runners on roads or runners in transport policy, what are we actually saying? Like, where do runners belong? Because I'm still not clear if I should be running on a road, on a pavement, or on a cycle path. In a pub, true.
There aren't
just
enough pubs. That's what we're actually campaigning against. We're not campaigning for cycle. We're campaigning because so many pubs are closing down. It's like you used to be able to run 100 metres from pub to pub, and now with the pubs closing down because of the planning laws, because of rates, it's just you've got to sometimes run up to 400 metres to another pub, and it's just not on.
True. Now, I'm aware that this is another long bad stuff. Not a bad thing, but I've got a few bits of news to drop in that I thought was... firstly, Ninka Brinkman, who was a guest a couple of months ago, second ever marathon, 2:22. Dutch record.
Boom.
Pretty incredible, right?
That's great.
Yeah, amazing. Wow. It just amazes me how quickly she's risen to that level, and and in some ways is, I think, could be quite sad, because I imagine this could spell the end of her Golden Trail involvement, because she's now at a level like 2:22. I mean, you're really good. Really, you're definitely Olympic standards, but also you can be winning some pretty big marathons like that. You can be taking home prize pots. I'm not sure if you are gonna revel the contrast of a Golden Trail series now, where you're clearly so good at a marathon distance. Are you going to prioritise going into a trail series? I don't know. I hope so, because I think it would help her strength, and I think she loves it, and it would be great. And it would be great for the series, and inspire people, but potentially marathon running's gain could be Golden Trail's loss, because the real excitement for if she was to return for next series is the fact that she's so good at running. She can get better at trail, and can she beat Maud over a full series, coming in with a bit more experience. So yes, I thought I'd mention that as a bit of news. And have we mentioned Kate Jaden? We must have done, surely. But if not, apologies. We're going to
we've talked about her, but don't know whether it's been on the podcast.
I don't know if we've celebrated the fact that she's got to 100 marathons in what looked like the most excruciatingly painful way. Just incredible. Reckless throughout, it seems, but brave and so we're going to be interviewing her, I think, next Tuesday. So is this going out this Friday? Next Friday? It may be too late to respond to questions, but we'll put it out on Instagram as well, that we're going to interview Kate.
Yeah,
because I'm sure you've got many questions. We'll be talking about that the 100 marathons, but actually we're going to be talking to her in general, because she's quite a personality, and getting a sense of the other things, the crazy Ironmans, her being
and how she fits it around her day job. I mean, like, it's a massive undertaking for someone that's a full-time athlete, but for someone who actually has to work as well. And everything else that she does in terms of her fundraising and everything else, just like, how the fuck does she schedule her day? That's the incredible thing.
The fact, and what she thinks, the picture that they used for 100 marathons just looked like the weirdest thing, where she's doing some weird dance. So you probably want to look epic, and you're just there in some strange, whether that was intended, whether she's like, oh man. Yes, so we're going to get Kate. So congratulations to her, and we'll mention again Tommy Hughes, 2:30 in the Manchester Marathon. Not just at age 62. We want to talk to him and his son potentially, if we can get either. So if people know Tommy Hughes or Ian Hughes, if you can reach out to us, because it's quite a common name So I've struggled to actually find contact details for them. So we'd love to talk to him to get a sense of how he's...
Sounds like a boxer's name, doesn't it?
So,
Tommy Hughes.
Tommy Hughes.
Doesn't it?
Tommy Hughes.
I just and we got to say
he probably was.
We've got to say a big congratulations as well to about Brighton and Manchester. Well done, lads. You've managed to get it the right distance this time, it seems. I might have spoken too soon there. It might come out in a few weeks, but very well done for putting on marathons at the actual marathon distance. Well done, chaps.
We didn't think it was possible. Well, thanks for listening, Do-Badders. If there's any guests you'd like us to interview, then message me, david@badboyrunning.com. And if you... Oh, one other thing. We need to talk about a field doctor soon, still.
Oh, yes!
I've got some updates on my...
The problem is that they're bloody frozen. So because they're in the freezer, and we never use the freezer, I forget that they're in there. And so it's just every time you tell me, I'm like, it reminds me, I've got to have another one. I've got to eat another one. Because I just don't use. We just don't eat frozen food that much. To type.
I do a lot, which is why mine are already all gone. But we will talk about that next time. We'll also talk about some crazy piece of PR, which I think is interesting from a PR point of view to do with running, and also to do with the challenge itself. Ultra runner versus a car. Need I say more? But yeah, please do subscribe. If you like this episode, go back to listen to the A to Z of Bad Boy Running. That gives you an insight into all the silly jokes and the lexicon of the podcast. And please do review us. It really helps. We've had quite a few reviews recently that have been really lovely and complimentary. We kind of want that, but we want something there's more jibes in there. More jibes, whether that's about my lack of long runs, lack of stamina.
Offensive, aggressive, filled with hatred, but still 5 stars. That's like the perfect one.
Still 5 stars. That is the challenge.
Still 5 stars.
I mean, that is tricky to do. Yeah, indeed. And
we've got plenty of you guys.
Get in the Facebook group or leave us messages for audios for bit.ly/badboyfeedback, capital BBF, and we'll play your audio recordings. Always remember the clap at the end.
Like that.
Well, thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you at the Run Show South, which is going to be epic, hopefully. And we'll see you next time.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.